I love you, but be so for real. As much as we complain about censorship, as much as we complain about fake news, I don't think we actually want real journalism. At least some of y'all don't. We say we want the truth. We say we want accountability. But what we actually reward by our views, what we actually reward on social media is controversy and things that make us feel validated, things that we relate to, things that get our blood boiling because we related to some part of our identity. And because of that, we're living in a moment where storytelling only is replacing reporting. And sometimes facts get bent to fit narratives instead of the other way around. Before I get into it, like, subscribe, follow, rate 5 stars wherever you listen to your podcasts. There's going to be a giveaway soon as well. And it's giving if you adore her, Dior her. That's all I'm going to say. Stay tuned. I Love You But Podcasts, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Okay, back to our topic at hand. What is the problem? Let me tell you. There is a difference between journalism and storytelling. And the word storytelling has become so big in mainstream now. And I even like to call myself a professional storyteller. Stories are important. Stories can be data driven. But I think it's important that we all understand the difference between that and journalism. Journalism is gathering, verifying, contextualizing facts in the public interest, whereas storytelling is framing events into narratives with emotional coherence. Think of the difference between an autobiography and a memoir, right? An autobiography is like, these are the events that happened in XYZ's life. A memoir is an author dramatizing certain pieces of their life to resonate for whoever their intended readers are. Is it necessarily all lies? No. But there is a difference between the autobiography and the memoir. Journalism asks what happened, what's verified, and what is the context behind what happened and what we were able to verify. Storytelling asks what feels compelling. Is there a hero or a villain? And who is the hero? Who is the villain? Social media has blurred the line between the two and only really most of the time rewards stories over like very hard facts. It doesn't leave room for ambiguity, nuances. Even think about like the documentaries that we watch. We always crave to have like an answer. This is the person who did it. This is why I feel like this is what happened. Think of, I don't know if you guys have seen the like Amy one where she went missing off of a boat or a cruise ship years and years ago on Netflix. I think a lot of people were moved by that because we couldn't form a very strong answer. We don't know the answer for sure of what happened to Miss Amy. Narrative framing, which similar to storytelling, but a different word, is when you select details that support a particular interpretation of what you're trying to tell. So it's more than just telling a story, but it's like, I'm going to select these details to frame this overall narrative. And that's what we're seeing a lot on social media today. We're not thinking about accuracy or rewarding accuracy. We are rewarding what is strong, considered clear, and raises our emotions. Think about like the TikTok deep dives that have dramatic music, the true crime content sharing that guides public perception before there's actually a trial, before there's a verdict. Now, why do we as audiences prefer narratives? It always ties back into psychology, right? So I know we've heard of this thing called confirmation bias, right? Where we seek information that confirms our existing beliefs. So if I believe that this world is flat, what is it? The earth is flat. I'm going to research information like, tell me why the earth is flat. You get this kind of dopamine loop of when you see a piece of content that confirms your beliefs, you get this high of being right. And then a lot of content is based around our identity. So when you see something that signals, hey, I am someone who believes that LGBTQ folks deserve the same rights as heterosexual folks. So if I believe that, when I see a piece of content that may signal that maybe I'm against that, I'm going to have a strong negative reaction to it. But then there's also content that signals like I am for this. So remember those black boxes after George Floyd in like 2020 that signaled, hey, I'm not a racist. I support black people. So it's all part of like how we identify as humans. And then moral outrage. As much as we say we're tired and we want the world to be better, there's a certain emotional response that reinforces belonging into a certain group when there's some sort of moral outrage. So, for example, if I have moral outrage over someone getting killed by police, someone who has autism being killed by police because they weren't educated on disabilities and how to navigate those situations. And I see a post that's like, abolish the police are killing neurodivergent people at an alarming rate. I'm going to have an emotional response. And it feels like it's productive to have that emotional response, to reshare. Champ, settle. Good boy. There you go. There you go. Good boy. It seems like it's productive to have that outrage, when in reality, it could just be performative. So, say I see that post, I share it, and I say, this is horrible, this is disgusting. At some point, I've raised the awareness, but have I really changed anything for the better, or did I just signal that I'm morally outraged so that folks can know that I'm a good person? Now, there's also parasocial dynamics, right? So, parasocial validation is when someone online makes you feel connected to them, whether it be through like, oh, and I also wash my hair on the third business day every week, or anything like that. We get validated. So when we feel validated through certain creators, we don't want to disagree. We don't really necessarily care about investigating the truthfulness of what they're saying. We just want to feel seen and heard. And then cognitively, when there's a simple villain, if I can pin my blame on one easy person, it just feels a lot better than having to do the work to dive deep and think about what I'm actually trying to change. So, for example, what just happened at the BAFTA Awards, where someone who has Tourette's involuntarily uttered out the N word a few times throughout the ceremony, a lot of people were easy and quick to villainize this man, to say he must be racist, to say we're protecting him and we're protecting white folks with disabilities over protecting black people. That's the easy villain, right? His name, John Davidson. John Davidson is the easy villain. However, if we actually force ourselves to do the thinking, the inner work that's not even that hard, well, I guess we're just not trained to do it, because when things are easily handed to us, we go that way. So let me not even say that. But which doesn't take too long, you can understand that the BAFTA Awards are pre-recorded and that they could have removed the reference to the N-word so that this man wouldn't be villainized, and that Michael B. Jordan and the other man, I forget his name, Delroy something, didn't feel uncomfortable and insulted. So who is the villain? Well, who runs BAFTA? The BBC. Why would it be in BBC's best interest to not take out the N-word, but take out reference to Free Palestine? Think about who does run the BBC. You could look into that. Why would whoever runs and makes the final say on BBC airings care about one thing and not the other? That is the work we need to do, instead of rushing to the easy answer of this man is John Davison is racist and he should be villainized. And quite honestly, like, if John Davison, you ever see this, I'm really sorry that this is happening to you. I know there's a stigma against all disabilities in one way or another. And as someone who is neurodivergent, although I do not have Tourette's and can't relate to that, I do feel for you in the way that society, some people have rushed to villainize you and how awful you must feel. So my heart goes out to John. Shout out John. Now, what is the danger of pulling people in to a false narrative storytelling or something that's not fully baked outside? Like, we just kind of talked about it with John Davidson and the BAFTA Awards, but it gets even deeper than that. Creators have a pressure to report fast, to report things that are going to give them views, because some of them, their primary way and only way of making income is through views on TikTok. I interviewed someone a couple weeks ago that I wasn't able to actually air the episode because I found a lot of factual inconsistencies with what they shared in the interview and what they had put on a TikTok story time versus what was actually verifiable through receipts, recordings, police reports, etc. Why did she feel the need to tell a story with inaccuracies? It was because her main source of income is through views. She doesn't have brand deals really, and she had every incentive to amplify the story in a way that people would resonate, in a way that people would feel outraged, in a way that would get more views and clicks. And I think a lot of times for me, myself as a creator, there's so many issues going on. The news cycle is so fast. And I have thoughts and comments on things, but I never want to comment on something unless I've done the work, done the research, and I feel strong in my opinion based on verifiable facts. Because at the end of the day, I feel like my responsibility as a creator is to get it right more times than not. And even if someone doesn't agree with my opinion, I would like my opinion to be based on what I've seen in facts, not just a narrative that the internet has pushed. I think about the difference between a shade room and TMZ. TMZ moves fast because TMZ has a big team of people who basically dedicate their lives to finding things out first and fast. But if you don't have a big team and a well-oiled machine for gathering, and reporting on information, then you cannot move as fast as a TMZ. Because at that point, you become irresponsible. And I think about a shade room. Even though shade room, they do have a team, they do have plenty of people, The Shade Room will report on something that will incite outrage, incite thoughts, fast, without necessarily thinking about the consequences of being wrong. Now, thinking about further consequences outside of creators being incentivized to report on missing, inaccurate, or glorified or magnified information, the public opinion will start moving faster and has started moving faster than facts can catch up. So then we become in a cycle of misinformation where there's mixed, accurate, and inaccurate information circulating together. There can be reputational harm. I think about the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial where it blew up on social media. Even me, as someone who likes to observe, identify, and verify both sides, I pretty fast was like, oh yeah, Amber Heard is a white woman playing the victim. Johnny Depp ain't want her no more, and she played the victim. And I just sided with Johnny Depp. And I consider myself a girl's girl. I believe in believing women and believing people of color first and verifying later. But for some reason, the social media had me in such a chokehold that I was like, yeah, F this bitch, Amber Heard. Now, after watching the Netflix documentary about the trial, I've come to realize that I was wrong. Social media created an image based on certain clips that Johnny Depp's team may or may not have fed into the media that did not tell the full story and created a narrative of her that was inaccurate. Doesn't mean that Amber Heard is perfect. Doesn't mean that she is a good or a bad person. No. But what I can say is, based on the actual facts that I saw from the documentary, it looks like he was doing some abuse up in that relationship. Okay? He was doing some abuse. And I'm not talking negatively about Johnny Depp. I'm just speaking factually. What I saw was a lot of forms of abuse. But because of social media reporting faster than facts, we all thought that Amber Heard was playing the victim and was the villain. Also, real issues get overshadowed by the drama because the real issues are always deeper than where we let the drama lie. As in the same thing that I was saying with the BAFTA Awards is like the real issue is BBC claiming to be an independent, people-driven organization for the people, by the people, and not being that, right? And I'll let you look into that and do the research because that's a whole other episode. I also just posted something on my Instagram story that really goes into a deep dive about that. But it's BBC who we should be holding accountable. But the drama has overshadowed the bigger picture. And then, like, people get emotional fatigue and whiplash as narratives shift left, right, left, right, left, right. There's like a collective fatigue from the constant outrage cycles. But then when we get collectively tired, when you're tired, what can you actually do about said issue that you're outraged about? Everything about that. I also think about like the emotional damage that can happen to folks that are inappropriately villainized. I know I talked about John Davidson, but then also in Chicago, there was a white lady who went missing, and her husband, a black man, had been on the news, and it would have appeared from what I saw that maybe he was not in shambles. So everyone jumped to say, he did it, he did it, he did it. But based off of nothing but watching him on an interview. Turns out, Miss Lady unalived herself at the 31st Street Pier or whatever in Chicago, and he was nowhere near her. Um, and I think about once she was found and unfortunately not alive, the damage that did to him as a person who's grieving the loss of his wife. To have everyone in a community, in a society, watching you on TV and saying, I know that you had something to do with her death, without any facts behind it. Now, if we had some facts to be like, hey, it looked like he might have did that, then that might be different. But if we're going to go based off of, oh, I see how you're looking in this video and you're not like a psychology major, minor professional, what are you doing but running your mouth? Now, what is real journalism, you might ask? And what does it actually require? Well, sorry to break it to you, but real reporting is actually very slow, boring, and responsible, which is why it struggles in the viral environment that we're in now. Here's what real reporting should include: verification, confirming facts through multiple reliable sources, identifying where the information is coming from and what interests the source may have or not have in the matter. Waiting. We need to have patience. The discipline of waiting when everyone is being rewarded for speaking quickly. The truth is almost always incomplete at first. So I understand that like speaking first is what's rewarded, but at very minimum, we could say, hey, I'm speaking on this now, but I know further information is going to come. Follow along as I learn and you learn and we learn about the facts. And this is what I think right now without all the facts. You can even say that. Corrections process. So when you understand that you were wrong, i.e. when I realized I was wrong about Johnny Depp and Amber Heard, I admitted it. Correct yourself, correct information, contextualize, explain the background and nuance. I understand that we have 60-second clips, 90-second clips, whatever, but make 2 videos, make 3 videos, explain that this is not black and white, because almost nothing in life is black and white. Think about how like reporters issue corrections and like the articles you might read that are ongoing stories, and they'll say, this is an ongoing story, last updated this date, this time. Think about like the Netflix documentaries that were in the making for years that we didn't even know about and get released, and you're like, oh, someone was investigating and reporting on this for years before they even came out with this. And mind you, these people have a team. So it's not just one person, but multiple people investigating, working with resources backed behind them from Netflix to get this information. Now, it's not to say that storytelling is just bad, because like I said, I consider myself a storyteller at many times. It's more so to say that you need to know the difference in what you're watching, what you're consuming, and know if it's journalism or storytelling. Think about, I don't know if you guys have seen like the Ed Gein Monster series on Netflix. I need a Netflix sponsorship or something, because the way I be shouting out Netflix, I don't even know if I've shouted out any other streaming platform outside of Netflix ever on this podcast. Netflix, call your girl. Anyway, on there, that is a story. It's storytelling based on real events. But when you actually go and look up specific stuff that was very moving in the show, you realize that that stuff was fictionalized to help round out the story for the series. That's not wrong. And then I think about like the Menendez brothers Netflix docudrama, where there were certain things that were dramatized, whatever the case may be. But then Netflix also supplemented that with an actual documentary and a podcast where they actually interviewed the Menendez brothers from jail. So there's room for both. And I think both are necessary and both help create a better, more informed society. It's just about knowing what is what, and we cannot have storytelling without having journalism, responsibly at least. So what can we do to prioritize the truth as creators and as consumers? Media literacy, the ability to evaluate sources critically. We need to ask, who benefits from this narrative? Pausing before resharing. So being intentional about what you share, or at least when you're sharing, to indicate that you're a part of a certain identity versus sharing to actually communicate knowledge, awareness. Being comfortable with uncertainty. A lot of times, there isn't an answer yet. There isn't a right and wrong yet. And we need to be comfortable with that, and not just comfortable, but enjoy it. Enjoy the journey of learning more, investigating. If we want better media, if we want actual facts, if we want to know the truth and we say we want accountability and change, we have to become better consumers. We have to become better creators. It's basically definitely up to us. The truth isn't always satisfying. It's not always going to give us some sort of immediate gratification, and it's not always going to give us closure. But it asks something deeper of us, which is patience, curiosity, and humility. Bringing real journalism back isn't just about facts-based reporting. It's about rebuilding our relationship as a society with not knowing. It's about removing the fear of the unknown, the fear of being wrong. I'd rather sit with something being complex than live inside the comfort of a story being told to me without the facts, personally. And it's not just about personal growth. It's about our collective responsibility as the human race to grow and change and evolve. If you want to create a space with me where we could talk about things as they happen, but leave room to learn more information and change our minds, like, subscribe, follow everywhere. I Love You But Podcast, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you get your podcasts. Let's bring critical thinking and true journalism back, baby.